All right, we're here with Adam Trombley, candidate for the open seat in West Anchorage. Adam, go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure, I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I'm married. My wife Stephanie. I have two daughters, 5 and 2, which is wonderful. You know, I never thought that they'd be into dresses so early, but they love their pink dresses and stuff. So that's been a lot of fun. Like I said, a lifelong Alaskan, and I've served on the assembly previously. I've served currently on the board of Aquila, which is a nonprofit, deals with a tremendous amount of homelessness issues and substance abuse issues. And they do stuff all over the state. And so just threw my hat in the ring for the West Anchorage seat since it was open.
So why running now?
Well, like I said, it's an open seat. 2 years ago when I lost re-election, we were living in a townhouse, sharing a wall, didn't have a yard. Like I said, I got 2 daughters, a growing family. And we wanted a single family home with a nice big yard. And we looked all over the place and tried to find somewhere that had open land. Because, you know, when you look and you say, well, I can build brand new for the same price I can buy something 30 years old, it just made sense to buy brand new and to be able to build. So that's where we found some land, and right down there off near Kincaid Park is wonderful.
If voters choose to elect you, what would be your first priority?
Well, some of the stuff I focused on in the past was really removing that government red tape. I focused very hard on, without getting into too much detail, but really I was able to pass an ordinance that actually introduced robust competition into government. It completely eliminated a huge obstacle for builders. And so what we've seen is permitting time in order to get a residential home built go from 6 to 8 weeks down to 3 to 4 days. We've seen real job creation. I'm also a sponsor of Proposition 8, which will repair our tax cap. What we've seen this current assembly do and this current mayor do is completely blow up the tax cap, which has been working pretty darn good for over the last 30 years. And they've blown it up and they said, well, we need flexibility, which probably means just reaching a little bit deeper into your pocket. And that's what you can expect. You can expect someone who's consistently introduced ordinances to actually reduce property taxes, to remove government red tape, to reduce those regulations and that regulatory burden.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the tax cap in just a minute. First, how can you help the Muni with the current budget crisis?
Well, it's simple. The Assembly has to have a balanced budget. We're not the federal government. We can't just print money. We can't go into debt to balance our budget. So it's simple. You say, what are our priorities? And you can see that in our line items when you look at our budget. The first 4 budgeted line items are police, fire, I think public works, so that would be roads, plowing, that kind of stuff. And then the 4th line item is our debt service. So there's really a component there. Those are our first 4 priorities. You have to pay your bondholders, obviously, and you want to make sure you have a good public service component as well. You want to make sure your streets are paved. You want to make sure the potholes are filled. Those are obviously very important. But when it comes to the budgetary stuff, you know, you want to have a policy that says we're not going to accept more in debt. We're not going to put more in voter-approved bonds than we retire in debt. That's a great way that you can actually free up a tremendous amount of money by reducing your overall debt service that you have to pay to your bondholders without having, because that money comes from property taxes. You free up a tremendous amount of money, which then you can spread around to police, fire, to public works. The other thing that you can always do as an assembly member is just introduce ordinances to reduce property taxes. So what do? You focus on your priorities and you live within your means. It's fairly simple.
Okay, so something might have to be cut then.
Sure.
Where would you cut?
Well, so in our last budget, we have 17 long-range planners for the municipality of Anchorage. Do we really need 17 long-range planners? No. That money could better be spent. That money could better be spent with police or fire. We'll go back to what I did accomplish when I was previously on the assembly. Again, I opened up the permitting component to private sector use. Do we have to have municipal inspectors? Do we have to have municipal plan reviewers? Those are the kind of things that you look at and you say, maybe there is a need for some of that, but how much of that can we open up? We look at other jurisdictions like Las Vegas, Oklahoma City. It works there. Let's bring those best practices into Anchorage.
How do you think Anchorage could diversify the economy?
Well, the only other way to diversify the economy is to really introduce a sales tax, okay? And that's been resoundingly rejected by voters. I think 4 or 5 times it's ever gone to the ballot. But at the end of the day, what we're not really looking at is additional revenue. We're looking at living with what we currently have. I don't think it's justifiable to adjust the tax cap in order to find a way to get more revenue. Property taxpayers are already taxed enough. It's not that we have to find additional revenue. It's we have to live within our means and constrain and focus on those 4 top priorities that the city has.
So you obviously do not support the new tax cap calculation.
No, I don't. In fact, I'm a sponsor of the original Proposition 8 to get it on the ballot. I mean, the idea that somehow we can adjust, that any assembly can go in and adjust the way that they calculate the tax cap to get additional revenue without getting approval by the voters, or at least asking the question to voters, because you can ask a question to voters. You can put something on the ballot that says, hey, do you approve adjusting the tax cap? It's not binding, but it's something that you should ask the voters. That's our main funding source. That affects everybody in the city. And to just willy-nilly adjust that without asking the voters' approval, I frankly think that's wrong. I don't see how that's not a violation of public process.
Would you work to change that?
Well, that's what Proposition 8 does. You vote yes on Proposition 8, and what that does is that it takes that tax cap calculation, it puts it into charter, and it says if the people want to make this change, then they have to vote on it. So absolutely.
Okay, moving to public safety, how would you make Anchorage a safer place to live?
Well, first off, there's a big discussion about more police officers, right? That's a big thing. Well, how do you pay for new police officers? The main funding source for police officers is what? Property taxes. You can get safer grants from the federal government, like the Sullivan administration did with fire department. But the federal government only pays for that for 3 years, and then that becomes a burden on the municipality to cover that cost. I'll tell you what you don't do. What you don't do is you don't go out and you throw out $170 million bond packages. What you don't do is you don't sell $100 million worth of bonds on the open market, because what did that do? That takes away money that could be going to police and fire, and it goes to pay our debt. That's irresponsible. You have a professional organization that says we need 425 police officers. I can't remember the exact number. We're about 100 underneath that. So what do? You say, okay, where are we going to prioritize our money? We don't sell those bonds. We don't increase those dollars going to pay for debt service. We invest in our police and our fire. That's what you should be doing.
Okay, now the mayor has been pushing housing first. How do you plan to help Anchorage's homeless population?
Well, this is very near and dear to my heart. This is an issue that I worked very hard on when I was on the assembly. Like I said, I was very successful at. One of the main issues with housing, well, there's two main issues. Number one, cost is obviously a big thing, but we look at what rolls into that cost. Every delay, every regulation, every stop workage that goes on adds to the cost of building. If you can eliminate those regulatory burdens, if you can eliminate those permit wait times, if you can eliminate the inspection wait times, that allows you to build more homes at a lesser cost at a faster rate. That's good for industry, and at the end of the day, it's good for consumers. And that's what that ordinance that I passed before was. And we've seen wait times, at least on the residential side, go from 6 to 8 weeks down to 3 to 4 days. That's a huge improvement. But the flip side of that is that now they're waiting sometimes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday before they ever get to an inspection. So let's open that inspection component up to. You can use a private sector inspector, or you can use a public municipal inspector as well. But let's make that process go faster. The other component to that is if you want affordable housing, don't manipulate a tax cap to make it more expensive, because you just raise the cost and make it. You've priced people out of the marketplace.
Okay, so there's a housing shortage in Anchorage with the Muni projected to grow. How can you help with that?
Well, it kind of goes back to what I had already said without regurgitating all that kind of stuff, but it goes back to that. And again, you got to get more homes on the market faster. There obviously is components to this where, hey, there's land issues. I get that. But when you look at, say, Title 21, for those who don't know what Title 21 is, that's our land use laws. That say, here's how if you want to build in these areas, this is the restrictions that you have. For example, the new Title 21, which I did vote against, it places height restrictions in certain parts of town. Well, if you have a land shortage and you want more housing, there's only one way to go, and that's up. But then you have a land use code that says, well, you can only go so high. So it's completely self-imposed. You remove those kind of barriers, you remove those obstacles, and you're going to get more housing because the marketplace is going to respond to the demand.
This summer, we get to watch a brand new industry start up here in Anchorage. How should the Muni be regulating commercial marijuana?
Well, I think what the Muni has done so far strikes a good balance. You know, they've separated out the if you're a grower, you can't also own a testing facility, right? So well, that's actually more the state that's actually done that, but still, municipalities obviously has to follow through with that. I think those are good. I think those are good barriers and those are good breaks. But this is a new industry. It's never been done here. So is it a perfect fix? Well, absolutely not, because it's a new industry. This is going to be an ongoing process, an ongoing manipulation of code in order to meet the challenges that we face in the future, because there's things that no one can foresee at this point. So I think at this point it's a good starting. I like how they've said you can only have certain operations in certain zoning components, whether it's industrial or commercial. You can't have a grower operation in a residential neighborhood. You have certain distances between schools and churches. I think those are good things.
The Anchorage School District wants to ask voters to pay for bonds over the next 6 years, knowing that taxpayers will likely be paying for all of it. You've touched on this already. How do you feel about that?
Well, I disagree with it, and I'll tell you why. In the latest bond sale by the school district, they went all the way back to 2007 to find bonds that they could sell. In 2007, they said the exact same thing they're saying today. We need these bonds, we need these bonds, we need... Well, if you need them so bad, why haven't you sold them from 2007? I will say this, the school district has done a very good job at prioritizing. They give a very detailed analysis to the assembly that says, here's our ratings, here's our needs going forward. They've done a good job there. But I think that there's got to be some sort of manipulation there if you did the same thing in 2007 and you haven't used that bond until 2016. I don't agree with that component of selling all those bonds. I think they should pay down their debt. On top of that, the other component to this is that the state reimbursement. You touched on that. I can remember saying, hey, look, sitting up there on the summit, hey, look, what's going to happen when the state, nope, don't worry about it, Mr. Trombley. When oil was $9 a barrel, the state always reimbursed. Well, here we are now, the state's saying we're probably not going to reimburse. That's a huge burden. And I think that they should be a little more sensitive to people's needs in this marketplace before they just go and they throw these bond packages out.
Okay, quickly, how would you rate the mayor's performance so far? What grade would you give him?
On the budget, I give him about a D, because he proposed this budget assuming that the assembly is going to manipulate the tax cap. I think that's wrong. That doesn't show a tremendous amount of separation. I think that shows a rubber stamp assembly, which is obviously what I'm trying to change. On the housing stuff, I think the initiative that he's shown has been decent. I don't know if I can give it a total grade yet, but again, it's a work in progress. So budgetary-wise, not very high. I like his stance and his desire to change some of the stuff when it comes to housing.
Okay. Well, Adam Trombley, thank you
I
so much.
appreciate your
We
time.
appreciate your time.